Okay, welcome back to part two. Part two is really going to be where I'm going to go into the bolts and nuts of exactly what diabetes is, what insulin is, and what sugar is. So I have quite a few videos here, which I think just give you a different viewpoint on diabetes and pre-diabetes and glucose and that kind of thing. So I have a couple of videos. So the first video is going to be from 60 Minutes. It's Dr. Lustig, MD, who is really the front runner of this whole movement of high sugar levels cause an array of diseases.
Now CNN's Sanjay Gupta on assignment for 60 Minutes.
The chances are good that sugar is a bigger part of your daily diet than you may realize, which is why our story tonight is so important. New research coming out of some of America's most respected institutions is starting to find that sugar, the way many people are eating it today, is a toxin and could be a driving force behind some of this country's leading killers, including heart disease. As a result of these findings, an anti-sugar campaign has sprung up, led by Dr. Robert Lustig, a California endocrinologist, who believes the consumption of added sugars has plunged America into a public health crisis.
Is sugar toxic?
I believe it is.
Do you ever worry that just sounds a little bit over the top?
Sure, all the time. But it's the truth.
Dr. Robert Lustig is a pediatric endocrinologist at the University of California, San Francisco, and a pioneer in what is becoming a war against sugar.
Deep breaths.
Motivated by his own patients, too many sick and obese children, Dr. Lustig has concluded that sugar, more than any other substance, is to blame.
What are all these various diseases that you say are linked to sugar?
Obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease itself.
Lustig says the American lifestyle is killing us.
And most of it, you say, is preventable.
75%.
Okay, so that's a pretty powerful video. This next video I'm going to show you is of Dr. Oz on Oprah, and what he's talking about is what high levels of glucose does in your bloodstream. So he's going to just start talking about how high levels of glucose or sugar in your blood is like glass shards in your artery.
Every day have diabetes.
Wow.
1/4.
So, okay, just to summarize, when you have too much sugar and your body isn't processing the sugar, it's like little crystals, it's like shards in the body, right? It's like pieces of glass. Okay, that's what happens in the body when you have too much sugar.
Right, and these little glass shards, imagine this is the lining of my artery, which we have everywhere in our body. It's scraping at it, it's digging at it, it's cutting it.
That's what too much sugar does in the body.
Exactly, and we have to scar the cuts. We have to heal them. The scarring process is the hardening of the artery.
Okay, so I just want to go over this. So high glucose levels, high sugar. So if you have anything above 85, that sugar in your artery, it literally is like glass shards scraping at the artery. And then when it heals, it's like a scar tissue there. So if you have elevated blood sugars above 85 morning fasting, you're in a state of chronic inflammation. So this is why chronic inflammation is so dangerous, because it's literally like scraping at the artery with glass shards, causing more inflammation. And then when that heals, it heals with a big scar. So just imagine if you keep on repeating damaging a scar, right? That scar is just going to get really fibrotic, and it's going to be not very good. It's not going to heal very well.
So it's scarring inside the body.
In all of our tissues.
In all of our tissues.
Every one of them.
Okay.
And that's a problem because that influences all of our organs. So, for example, what happens when it scars our kidneys?
You have kidney failure.
You have kidney failure. So here's a picture of a normal kidney on the left.
Yeah.
Beautiful, plump, robust.
Yeah.
Look at the kidney on the right. It's shrunken. It's shriveled. It's been killed.
That's a diabetic kidney.
Diabetic kidney.
Okay.
What happens in the eyes?
Okay, so this next slide here, I just want to kind of give you a different perspective on hormones And what we're actually trying to do is we're actually trying to normalize hormones in your body. Okay, so I'm just going to replay this video over again, and what I want you to watch is, okay, it first starts off as the kid, and then when that's done, then I want you to turn your attention to this gal right here. So my question at this point here, what causes, a baby to become a child to an adult, right? What causes that versus here when this gal gains weight? So this is my point here, is both of these here, oops. Both of these things occurring right now are hormonal related, right? So when someone grows up, to be a baby, to a child, to a man or a woman, what does this is hormones. So it's not overeating, right? It's a hormonal thing. You can just imagine, people in Africa that don't have enough food, these starving kids, right? Which is a total tragedy, but their body still grows. Their body still gets bigger, even though they don't have enough nutrition to actually grow their body. It still grows. So this right here is hormones when we talk about, a child. And then what actually causes a person to gain weight is this is also a hormonal thing. So it has nothing to do with the amount of calories that you're eating. It has to do with the hormone that we're actually trying to regulate, which is insulin and which is glucose. So again, those numbers where we talk about functional medicine, we need these numbers in a functional range. Now here's just some math. So if a person gains 50 pounds, so if a person gains 50 pounds over 25 years, okay, that would be basically 2 pounds per year for 25 years equals, 50 pounds. Now, if you do the math here, in 1 pound, okay, there's 3,500 calories. So theoretically, someone would have to eat 3,500 additional calories to gain 1 pound, all right? So now if you're going to gain 2 pounds a year, basically it's 7,000 calories per year. So it's 3,500 times 2 is going to equal 2 pounds, right? So if you do this, if you divide the math, 7,000 calories divided by 365 days per year, we're only talking about 20 calories. So the difference between gaining 50 pounds and not gaining any weight over 25 years is a 20 calorie difference. So this is my point. It's not the calories. See, the calories has nothing to do with it. What it has to do with is hormones. So if your hormones aren't working correctly, you're going to gain weight. You're going to turn those calories into weight. Now, if the average person eats 2,000 calories per day, we're only talking, a 1% over calculation that you're actually eating. So it's not about the calories. It's actually about balancing hormones. So it's not about, the few maybe McDonald's French fries that you had, or the fourth half slice of bread. That's not the problem. It's actually the hormones that we need to try and deal with, which is insulin and sugar. So insulin is a hormone that must be controlled to control your sugar levels. So where is this actually produced? Okay, so this right here, that right there is your pancreas. Yeah, pancreas right there. That is what produces insulin. So just take your right hand right now and just go by your right rib cage, and right below your rib cage, where your rib cage ends, that's your liver. Now, basically, right behind your liver is your pancreas, and your pancreas is what produces the hormone insulin, and that's the hormone that we need to control. All right, so this next video is going to show you how your pancreas actually works on a daily basis.
The pancreas is a gland that performs important roles in both the digestive and endocrine systems. It is located behind the stomach and next to the... After food is partially digested in the stomach, it flows into the duodenum as an acidic substance known as chyme.
So this is what I want to show you right here. So this is your pancreas, right? And then you can see this right here. This is what produces the insulin. Right here. So the insulin sees food, right? Or I shouldn't say the insulin sees food. Your body, you've eaten some, let's say a bagel. That's broken down into glucose, and your body sees that. It sees that in your bloodstream, and then it produces insulin. So what I want to show you is you can see the stream here, how the insulin is going to start to run out because you've just eaten like a bagel.
Secretions flowing.
Okay, so you can just see it moving. That's kind of I just want you to see how the insulin is moving, and then we're going to come back to this video in a short bit. Okay, so you eat food, and then your pancreas starts to produce insulin. So this next video here is going to explain exactly what diabetes is and what pre-diabetes is.
When you eat food that contains carbohydrate, it's broken down in the stomach and digestive system into glucose, which is a type of sugar. We need glucose from food because that's what gives us energy. Carbohydrate-containing foods are things like starchy foods, sugary foods, milk and some dairy products, and fruit. This glucose then moves into the bloodstream, and the body detects that the blood glucose level is rising. In response to that, the pancreas, which is a little gland that sits just underneath the stomach, starts to release a hormone called insulin. And it's insulin that helps our body get the energy from the food we eat. The bloodstream then takes the glucose and the insulin to every cell in our body that needs it. To make this easier to understand, let's look at muscle cells. At the muscle cells, it's insulin that allows the glucose to get into the cells where it can be used for energy.
Okay, so that was a really critical statement. She said it's insulin that allows the glucose to get into the cell. So you're going to want to write that down. Insulin allows glucose to get in your cells for energy.
It's a bit like insulin is a key unlocking the door to the cells so the glucose can get in. That way.
So what you want to pay attention to here is this right here stands for that. You see that's the little insulin. So this would be the insulin. You're going to see this little, like right here, you can see that insulin. It attaches into that key, and then what happens is that insulin allows the door to open, and then the glucose goes inside your cell. So what insulin does is insulin opens the doors on your cells and allows the glucose to go into your cell.
The glucose level starts to drop. But the blood glucose level can be topped up at any point by the liver releasing extra glucose that it has stored. The blood glucose rises again, and again the pancreas produces more insulin to move with that glucose through the bloodstream to the muscle cells, open the doors, and let the glucose in.
So you can really see it here. Okay, this is a really good example. The glucose there, it went on. It went in that little key right there, right? That door opened, and then the glucose goes into the cells.
The body functions best with the blood glucose at an optimum level. It doesn't like it if the blood glucose rises too high. Normally.
So when the blood glucose raises too high here, that would be pre-diabetic, or if it's really, really high, that would be being a full-fledged diabetic. Now you can see there's an optimal range right here of glucose levels that we want.
There's a cycle within the body which balances out the glucose and the insulin level, and this is achieved by the food you eat, the pancreas and the liver.
So you want to pay attention to right over here. You see this is your insulin, right? That's the insulin marker. You can see how the insulin stays in a nice tight range, and so does glucose stays in a nice tight range.
However, in some people, the system doesn't work properly and they develop diabetes. Type 2 diabetes accounts for about 85% of all cases in the population. It's most common in the over 40 age group in the white population and in the over 25 age group in the black or South Asian population. Type 2 diabetes is a little more complex because there's slightly more processes at work. Either the body isn't producing quite enough insulin, or the insulin it is producing isn't working properly. That can be due to being overweight, because a build-up of fat can stop insulin doing its job properly, but it can also happen in people of a healthy weight. So in type 2 diabetes, the carbohydrate containing food is broken down into glucose in the stomach and digestive system as normal. That glucose then moves into the bloodstream. The pancreas starts to produce insulin, which moves with the glucose through the bloodstream to all the body cells which need glucose for energy. However, the glucose can't always get into the cells because the locks to the cell doors have become furred up with fat deposits.
Okay, so just for some clarification, so the insulin, right, so this is where the insulin go right here. Now you can see how there's like white stuff around the insulin. They say it's gummed up because of fat. That's really not the case, but it's a good visual. So your insulin on your cells become insulin resistant, meaning that your body's had so much insulin floating around that it doesn't actually believe it to be true. So these become insulin resistant, and that doesn't allow the insulin to attach and open the door. Okay, so if you become insulin resistant, the doors don't open up, and guess what's going to happen to your glucose levels? They're going to do what? They're going to start to go up. And this is the sign of being pre-diabetic, and if it doesn't get fixed, then you go to complete diabetic condition.
Means that the insulin can't open the cell doors properly. So the level of glucose in the blood continues to rise. In response to this, the pancreas produces even more insulin. So the blood glucose levels continue to rise and the insulin levels continue to rise. This situation is further complicated by the cells, who are desperate for energy, sending out emergency signals to the liver to release stored glucose. The blood glucose level goes up, and the pancreas produces more and more insulin until it can't cope anymore, and eventually.
So here's what's happening. So your glucose level continues to get increase and increase. Your insulin level also goes up. Now I just want to make sure you understand why that is. On that last picture, if the insulin can't get into the lock and key, if it bounces off, then your glucose levels continue to raise, and your body sees that, and it tells the pancreas here, the pancreas down here, to produce more insulin. Now, why does it tell it to do that? Because insulin is the hormone that opens the door and allows that glucose to get into the cell. So it's a self-regulating mechanism. But when you become insulin resistant, your cells don't respond to the insulin, and your insulin goes up and your glucose goes up. And that's a state of chronic inflammation. That's a state of autoimmunity. That's a state of fibromyalgia, cancer, diabetes, pre-diabetic, heart disease, chronic fatigue. All these things manifest in a body when you have high glucose and high insulin levels?
It wears out. As with type 1.
Okay, so here, insulin is the key that allows glucose to enter the cell. So here's another visual. I'll just grab some pictures of this. So this is normal, right? And then we have a pre-diabetic or a diabetic. Now you see these little keys here. This is, that right there. That's the insulin right there. So you see how the insulin attaches to the cell, and then the door opens, and then the glucose goes right in, right? So if your glucose goes into your cell, your glucose levels would go down, right? So so this is gonna be glucose. If your glucose if your glucose levels go down, then guess what else goes down? Your insulin goes down. And these are really horrible hormones to have floating around in excess, the insulin. Now let's take someone that is pre-diabetic or diabetic. You can see the receptor there, it's not open to receive the insulin to allow the door to be open because of years and years of, just this high state of glucose and insulin. So what happens then you have high glucose levels, and then you're also going to have high insulin levels. So this is really the crux of what we're talking about, what we're actually trying to handle through functional medicine. So insulin is the hormone of fat storage. This is real critical. This right down here. Insulin, in the simplest terms, put things into your fat cells. They put things into all your cells, but particularly your fat cells. Okay, if things are being put into your cells, what's going to happen to your cells? They're going to get bigger, right? So down here, fasting insulin greater than 6 is putting things into your cells. So I like to use this analogy. Your heart, your liver, your pancreas, your muscles, they only can take on so many calories, right? They can only take on so many calories before they shut the doors and they don't allow any more glucose into the cell. Now there's one exception to that, that's fat. Fat is always open for business. That's why I say fat is always open for business. So fat is always willing to take on more calories. Your heart, your liver, your pancreas, your muscle cells, they actually shut the door, right? So when they shut the door, they don't allow glucose to get into the cell. Then your glucose goes up and your insulin goes up. And if you have high insulin levels, insulin by itself, what insulin does is pounds things into the cell, right? So if you have a lot of glucose, it's going to get pounded into the fat cell, and you're going to become fatter and fatter and fatter. You're going to start to gain more and more weight. All right. So this next slide here. What I've showed here is someone that has high insulin levels, and this is someone that has slow insulin levels. So this is one of my patients that I showed you in the beginning here. This is a fasting insulin. Okay, so this is insulin. This is insulin level. Now remember, when we started out with her, she was at 23, and now here, way down here, she's 3.7. So what I've come up here with is I'm going to show you the speed of how your pancreas is working. So look at the above where it says high insulin. Now look at here now. This is going to start to work. This is low insulin. So what I want you to pay attention to is the speed at which the insulin is coming out of the pancreas. You can see up here that the speed is the speed of the pancreas moving, the speed of the insulin moving out of the pancreas is very high, right? This is what have, her level's 23. Then down here, it's nice and slowed. Once we've fixed her cells, once we've done a whole functional medicine program, the insulin is very, very slow to come out. That's what you want. Okay, I'm just going to play that again, and I'm not going to say anything. I just want you to actually watch the video so you can see it yourself in start to finish. Okay, so this right here, that high level is 23, down here 3.7, which is that. So high insulin causes people to gain weight. So high insulin causes people to gain weight among a bunch of other chronic degenerative conditions. The majority, 95% of chronic degenerative conditions in this country can be related to high insulin. Because what does insulin do? Insulin puts things into the cell. That's its job. Okay, it puts things, calories, into the cell. This is the cell, right? So if you have a lot of insulin floating around in your body, it's going to drive the calories in there, and you physically are not going to be able to lose weight. Because in order for you to lose weight, what do you have to do? This is the cell. You have to take the calories from the cell and put them outside and burn them for energy. Right? So this is the goal of weight loss, is normalizing insulin, decreasing insulin, so you can actually get to this fat in here and use that for energy. Okay? Now here's another visual. I'm going over a lot of visuals because I really want you to understand this concept. This part 2 is really important. So this would be your cell right here. Okay? Now you just had a bagel, so your glucose goes up. So your body sees the glucose, and that tells your pancreas to start to produce insulin, right? Now pay attention to this circle right there. So the insulin comes around and it attaches to your cell. And what happens to the little hole there? It opens up, okay? So then when it opens up, the calories go inside, and you can see those little dots. You can see these little dots right here, right? That's all the glucose inside the cell. Right, so here you can see that glucose moved inside the cell. So the insulin here allowed that door to open up and then the glucose to go into your cell. Now, let's just say this is a heart cell up here, okay? So this is a heart cell. Let me get rid of that. So this is a heart. Okay, this is a heart. That's a heart cell, okay? Now what happens if the heart cell needs energy, it's going to allow the insulin to attach to the heart cell and allow the glucose to go in, okay? Now over a period of time, if you have elevated glucose levels, the insulin tries to attach here, but it bounces off because your heart cell doesn't need any more energy. It's been bombarded with energy because you've had high glucose levels and high insulin levels. Now, what's the one thing that's always open for business? It's fat, right? Fat is always open for business. So fat is always going to be taking on these extra calories here and getting larger and larger and larger over a period of time. So one thing that we want to do is we want to monitor these two markers among other markers to make sure your body's in harmony. When you have increased glucose and you have increased insulin, your cells become crusty, right? And that's not a good thing for health overall. So that's the end of part 2. So I hope you've enjoyed this. My recommendation to you is that you go back and re-listen to this another time. Take some notes before you go on to part 3. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you in part 3.